to The Book of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. For a fan of kids' books, a visit to the Planet Esme Book Room in Chicago is like a trip to Graceland or Disney World. It's an apartment packed to the gills with children's books, with quite a few toys, and with tons of book-related tchotchkes. And it's run by author and radiologist Esme Raji Codell as a private salon. I was lucky enough to attend a party at Planet Esme, where I ate deep dish pizza and sat on the floor talking shop with podcaster Mark Blevis, author Michelson, and Esme herself. So, Esme, what's your vote for next year's Sidney Taylor Book Award? Oh, look at that cover.
Yes.
It's a hologram.
It's got a lenticular cover. You've never heard of Sandy Koufax by Jonah Winter and Andre Carrillo. And I really love it. For one thing, I think Jonah Winter is long overdue for some serious children's book recognition in general. He always does amazing biographies.
What else has he done?
You asked me at the end of a long day. I am cheating a little bit. But he's done so many. Yeah, they're just listing his baseball books. He's got a ton of stuff coming out this year, I think, that isn't out yet.
Biography?
Yeah, I actually want to put it on hold. I want to see one that's not even out yet.
So I know you like this book, too. What do you like about this book?
Well, we'll start off with the fact that it's a baseball book. And I used to be a huge baseball fan until...
Used to?
I used to, yes. But I hold Bud Selig responsible for my end of love of baseball for a number of reasons, but the most significant being that my beloved Montreal Expos are no more. And I refuse to accept that the Washington Capitals... It's kind of like when the Dodgers moved out west. To me, the Washington Capitals just don't cut it anymore. It's a beautifully done book. The illustrations are done in this really coarse way that's really fun and exciting. It's really well written, and it tells a remarkable story about a remarkable person. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Sandy Koufax had a huge impact in baseball in only 6 years. His career was 6 years. And he did more in 6 years than most people do in a career of 20 years. I just love the way it captures, both in text and in images, the struggle of the person. And you can even see it, like his posture, when he figured out he was done in baseball. The whole body posture, it says so much. And there's no facial expression, it's all shading. And you can just imagine what the facial expression is. And then, of course, they build in... I mean, this is kind of regurgitating what we did in our own review, but it's just so good the way they incorporated some statistical facts, which, of course, baseball freaks love. And... gold. Look at that.
Yeah, it's like not gilt edge pages, but like gold all over the pages as a what do you call that? 6-color printing with a spot highlight. I don't remember what you call that, but it's like gold laid onto the other colors of the pages.
There's a lot about this book that I'd argue is gimmicky, but it's gimmicky in a really tasteful and additive way. Yeah, it's not gimmicky for gratuitous gimmick. Well, I mean, it would be gimmicky to have. Well, he was a Gold Glove winner, right? So it would be gimmicky to have gold here and all these other things in a book that was just trying to make an impression, but it doesn't need those things. They're embellishments which make them work. If the story didn't stand, the illustrations didn't stand, then to me it would be totally gratuitous. Right. Yeah, and so it just totally, it's perfect. And then, it captures, I don't know, look at that. I mean, you can almost see a facial expression, but there really isn't there. It's all shading, and it
sort of reminds me of an old movie. It's like the lighting from a movie of the 40s, the way they've drawn it. So, Mark, do you concur with Esme that this should be a possible winner of the Sidney Taylor Book Award?
Possible winner. Hands down, should win.
You think it should win?
Yeah. I have to be honest. I don't know much about the competition right now, and because we don't exclusively read Jewish literature.
Of course.
But
you're familiar with a lot of what has come out in this year in the world of children's books.
Absolutely.
So from what you've seen, you think this is an award-winning quality book.
Well, and there's another thing that I like about this book, and its connection to Judaism. When I grew up, most of what I knew of Jewish literature was Holocaust, basically. I mean, it was almost like it was shoved down our throats.
Yep.
Like the Diary of Anne Frank and I Am David, we had to read for school.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember those because they had such an impression on me story-wise. But from my own reading and my own experiences, the only book that I recall really is The Fools of Helm.
Is what?
The Fools of Helm.
The Fools of Helm.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Which, really, that's the only picture book I remember, the Jewish picture book from my childhood. And I think that's a couple of reasons. One is there was probably very little back then. Certainly there was very little compared to what there is today in the quality. But also, I just don't think that the awareness of the books was strong. Back then, you depended on your librarian, really, because there was no internet.
No blogosphere.
Exactly. And so you really depended on your librarian. And I think the librarian that we had at our school, because it was an all-purpose library, knew a little bit about the kids' books, but also had to juggle the kids' books with the adult books. Mm-hmm. And so she might not necessarily immerse herself in kids' books the way there are now dedicated librarians for that. So
there were then, too, just maybe yours wasn't one.
Quite possibly. I admit that I don't know enough about the way libraries work and librarians work, but that was my experience. And so I'm excited now as an adult that I get to see these amazing books. And Sandy Koufax, absolutely. I mean, it's about a Jewish character, but it doesn't beat the Judaism into you. And so, yes, I love that book.
Yeah. And Esme, you started to say why you love that book, and then you got up and what did you go to
Then
get?
I got flustered because when I find a book I love so much, it's hard to talk about. But I was talking about Jonah Winter and what a wonderful contribution he's made to my favorite genre of children's literature, which is biography. And he's coming out with another book from Scholastic this year called Peaceful Heroes, which celebrates a lot of wonderful people who aren't necessarily part of the timeline of war. Oscar Romero, Marla Ruzicka, people that you might not have heard of. But I really, getting back to his Sandy Koufax thing, it's got this great lenticular cover.
Explain what that means.
That means that when you look at it one way, he's pulling back his hand like he's going to pitch, and then you tilt it, and it's got this little gimmick so it looks like he's actually pitching the ball.
It's a Cracker Jack insert.
Yeah,
yes.
It's like a movement, what do you call that, hologram.
Yes, and I don't think I'd use the word coarse to describe these illustrations, if you don't mind. I do think they're very slick, the lines.
Can I defend myself?
Yeah, sure.
It's not a lot of detail, and I think that's what I meant. It's very broad brush as opposed to, like, you couldn't compare this book to Jane Dyer, for example, for
It's a
fine
completely
detail.
different style.
Yeah, but I was trying to communicate that it's not a lot of detail. It's minimalist in terms of color. Like there's very few colors in here. In fact, I think it's probably black, white, and blue.
Yes.
But it's and
red.
I don't mean to take over your spot.
No, go for it.
Didn't want to make it sound like I was painting the pictures in a bad light.
No. I just think it's a very modern illustration style that I haven't really seen before. There's a looseness in the line. There's a lot of characterization in the faces without actually being caricatured, and it's a very fine line that it walks, but the art is really just stunning. I look at hundreds and hundreds of children's books, and I haven't seen the lines so perfectly placed on every single page.
Wow, what a compliment.
I really think it should win lots of awards this year, but definitely the Sidney Taylor, because like they say, you don't have to be Jewish. It definitely addresses the prejudice that Sandy Koufax experienced, but like Mark says, it doesn't beat it down your throat. It's just something you can appreciate as a human being first, before you're a Jewish person.
Cool.
So can I ask you a question about this?
Yeah.
Do you think it would win the Codell, since you're so excited about the illustrations?
Well, speaking as an author, I'd be prouder to win the Sidney Taylor, but sure, it could win that too.
But is
Definitely.
it a little old for? Well, I guess you can't say that now that
Hugo Cabret.
right.
Yeah.
Now you can't say that a book is the wrong age category for the Caldecott anymore.
I wouldn't say that it's too old, even by the older standards. When we look at Casey at the Bat, which won the Caldecott, that was also very visually sophisticated. I find this even more accessible for its intended readers. It's a great read aloud too. It would be nice in any award when it's something that the children would actually enjoy and not just the librarians.
Yeah.
And this fits the bill.
I think this has another advantage too, which is a reluctant reader can get excited about this book. I was a reluctant reader. I had no interest in books, and part of the reason I think was because books like this didn't exist when I was a kid. They don't have to be baseball books, because I mean there's tons of books now that I read that just grab me right away, and I just want to keep on reading. And I think this is definitely one of those books that if you have a child that doesn't get reading or isn't interested in reading, would rather play a video game or go outside and play, this is a book that might get them to sit down for a few minutes.
And I think something else that makes this a contender is that I think the mark of a truly great picture book is that marriage, that the book doesn't succeed alone on the pictures or alone on the text. Isolated from each other, it's much less than the whole, but together, it really knocks your eyes out.
Yeah.
And your heart.
Wow. You guys totally are in love with this book, and I haven't even read it yet, and now I can't wait. And I'm going to steal your copy and take it home with me.
That's what you think.
So are there any others that you would say should win? Like, this looks like maybe it would win in the older... I can't tell yet. I haven't read it. I don't know if it would the younger readers or the older readers category. Maybe
Honestly,
younger.
I think it'd be
but
both.
Yeah.
But you know, like in terms of a chapter book or a novel or a YA book, can you think of something you would recommend for Sidney Taylor?
Well, I can think of one that I just couldn't put down for a second, that I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning reading, and it wasn't one you might necessarily expect.
Okay.
It was Brenda Ferber's Gemma Hartman, Camper Extraordinaire.
Yeah.
And it's such a departure from her last book, which was
Julia's Kitchen.
Julia's Kitchen was so serious about a child who was dealing with the death of a parent. But Gemma Hartman, Camper Extraordinaire, was simply a friendship story about a girl who believes friends are supposed to last forever, as little girls often do when they're about 10 or 11, and then discovers the hard way that it doesn't last forever, this friendship that she's really cherished. I really liked it because there wasn't a word out of place. The pacing was perfect, and it was so pitch perfect for its intended audience. I read so many novels that they really could be adult novels. This was a book that really cared about the kids it was trying to address and took their feelings really seriously. It also had really great plot, pacing. If you want to learn how to write an intermediate children's book, this is the one to read. Just outline it. She had it down.
Wow.
Really
That's
well
great.
done.
And then I just want to point out that Brenda won the Sidney Taylor Book Award for Julia's Kitchen, and in fact before that she won the Sidney Taylor Manuscript Award before the book was even published. Now Gemma Hartman I know is not an identifiably Jewish book, but I heard her saying earlier today that she feels like Gemma Hartman is a Jewish name and that Gemma is Jewish, but that's just not relevant to the story of what she does at camp.
Yes.
Did you feel like it had Jewish themes or elements?
I did feel it had a lot of Jewish themes and elements, and I really liked that it was very integrated, that she was part of a larger world, not necessarily a primarily Jewish world, but she was bringing her Jewish background into the camp. It was a cheerful book, a sad book. It was exactly the sort of book I would want to read when I was 10 or 11. I've even taken off the girly cover and given it to some boys to enjoy as well.
I want to add, by the way, that I thought April's book could be a contender.
New Year at the Pier.
Yeah, based on what I know and the few books I've read.
What struck you about New Year at the Pier?
I thought it was a really nice take on forgiveness, and it happened to be centered around Rosh Hashanah as an event. But I thought the theme of forgiveness and the way it was presented from the point of view of a young boy who's just figuring out what forgiveness is all about and how difficult it can be to ask for forgiveness and apologize for things. I thought that made it a really interesting read.
Can you think of anything for older? I know you focus a lot on picture books, but have you read anything for older kids or teens that you think real highly of?
I don't get to read a lot of the chapter books, just from the timing point of view, and so Andrew does. I know that there's one book that Lucy was really excited about, but may have come out last year or even long before that. And the name escapes me, but it's about that girl who has her bat mitzvah and is coupled with the Russian girl who was killed in the Holocaust.
Oh, The Diary of Laura's Twin?
Yes.
Yeah, that was last year, I think.
Yeah. And based on how excited Lucy was by that story.
Yeah, and it did win some awards, actually.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I have to plead ignorance. In fact, I was really honored to be able to talk about Sandy Koufax with you and Esme, especially since I'm kind of new to this Jewish book scene and the Sidney Taylor Awards.
When your kids are not your target age group for the way your show is currently formatted, are you going to start talking about older kids' books, or are you just going to stick with this because it's just so much fun to talk about?
Well, I think we'll always do picture books, though there has been a gradual migration to do more longer form books. The problem is that because I don't read them, we're getting creative as how we do them. So Andrea might talk about the book, and I might either just ask a question, or Esme's walking out on us, by the way.
Say goodbye, Esme.
Goodbye, everybody. I've got to clean up some pizza.
Okay.
Thanks for the pizza, by the way. It was delicious. That was my first ever Chicago deep dish pizza. It was 3 fingers deep. Andrea tends to talk more about the chapter books now. Sometimes we'll get Lucy or Bela to contribute as well. And what I'll end up doing typically is either sitting quietly and watching, or because I can't really do that very well, because my personality doesn't allow that, I will probably either ask questions, or I'll happen to be aware of one part of the book that I heard people talking about. And so I'll jump in with my moment of excitement. Oh, what about blah, 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 blah. And so it sounds like I really know what I'm talking about, but I don't.
You can just interview them about it.
Which is kind of, but I don't really want it to be an interview.
I
think it's more fun when it's conversational and we don't have to prompt like that. And Lucy and Bela are actually getting better at that. We used to get really frustrated because they wouldn't be able to communicate their thoughts.
Right.
When the microphone was on, they would be giddy or silly or whatever, but when we were just talking about it without the microphone. So we used to try to sneak the microphone. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that worked a couple times. They're getting better. And what it might mean is just that as the show matures, then maybe they become more integral to the show, and Andrew and I become marginalized. But we've gotten totally off topic.
Yes. Okay, so go back to what should we talk about then?
Oh, we were talking about Jewish children's books.
Did you have more that you wanted to add to that? So you love the Sandy Koufax book.
I love the Sandy Koufax book. I think it's the runaway winner.
Mm-hmm. And you like New Year at the Pier very much. And what was the other thing that you were saying you liked?
I said the one about the diary, but that's
right,
past.
Right.
So honestly, I don't know what else is. I know that Richard Michelson has a book coming out. Is your book coming out this year, Rich?
So what?
Your new book that you were writing in Martha's Vineyard when you won the Sidney Taylor Award?
That's coming out.
I have a. Yeah, your publisher at Book Expo said it wasn't soon. They could hardly tell me anything. You talking about the baseball book? They could hardly tell me anything yet.
Book? No.
Oh, you're doing a baseball book. That I did not.
Oh, well, what's the other one? Come down here where we can hear you.
We're now joined by Richard Michelson, winner of
on the floor of Esme's gingerbread apartment.
Yeah, you guys are always working. This is a party.
This is how we have fun.
The book I was doing on the vineyard was with Mary Azarian.
Yes, right.
And that's a book on county fairs.
Oh, cool.
It's called Blue Ribbon County Fair.
And it's Jennifer's favorite.
Yeah, Jennifer likes it.
Why is it your favorite?
Because Molly's in it. Molly's our dog.
Your daughter is.
That's right.
She's got a starring role.
Your dog is a starring role in the book.
Yes, yeah. So I try not to direct artists because I know they want to do exactly what they want to do. But I did tell Mary that she has to use our real live Molly for the book, or my family will disown me. But I think that won't be out. Mary hasn't started it yet, actually. She's, I think, going to come visit us this summer on Martha's Vineyard and visit, and we'll go to the county fair together, and she'll take pictures because that's where I wrote it. So,
you'll bring Molly with you.
And we'll bring Molly. We'll be there. So that'll be 2010.
And then the baseball book.
The baseball book is Sleeping Bear, who did A is for Abraham. and that is about Lippman Pike, the very first professional baseball player, and also happened to be Jewish. The first baseball player who was being paid to play and got caught.
Got caught for being paid?
Yes, because baseball was an amateur game, and basically you played for your hometown, and there were hometown rivalries, Brooklyn, this neighborhood against that neighborhood, etc. And
so he broke the gentleman's agreement before there was one.
He was offered money to play for a team outside of his neighborhood.
Is that your phone?
Yeah, and that's Donnie's ring. It's my husband.
The identifiable rings. And he was, and some of his teammates were upset, heard rumors that he was being paid, and of course they were upset because they weren't being paid, and they couldn't understand how anybody could be paid to play baseball because it was
they were monetizing baseball. Podcasters.
So he was called before the board of the league, of the amateur league, and accused of accepting money. And what happened is that nobody turned up to testify against him, because in reality,
everybody wanted money.
They all wanted money too.
In reality, every team had, in fact, players who were being paid.
Oh.
And so the gig would have been up. What happened was that Lippman, who was also the very first home run king of organized baseball, the following year the amateur league agreed to go professional, and they changed their name from the amateurs to professionals, and paid players were allowed to be on the team. And that was the beginning of professional baseball.
So how many home runs did the home run king in the 1800s hit?
He had 8. He was known as one of the great power hitters. He also led the leagues in stolen bases and was an incredible player, basically forgotten by many people today. But he was a true hero of the early game, and one of the things that he was known for was being a true gentleman, both on and off the field. So he's quite a character. Not a lot known about him because most of the time he was playing, there weren't a lot of box scores or stories about this. So that'll be out. We've got a ways to go. They just hired the illustrator, I think, Zach Pullen, but he has a couple of books to do first, so I have no idea when exactly that will be out.
Can I say something? You do nonfiction as well as you do fiction.
Thank you so much. Yeah, make sure you include that. Don't include that.
Say that louder, Mark.
What was I saying again? No, because I'm just thinking about a book like Across the Alley, which was completely fictional. It was based on the neighborhood that you lived in and some of your experiences, but the story didn't happen. The story happened in your head.
Some books go back and forth between the two before I settle on it. Now, when Bussing Brewster, in fact, started out as a nonfiction book. I read a story in the newspaper about a black child who was the first in the Boston busing, a bus to an all-white school. And I started out writing that story as a nonfiction book, but as it evolved, I thought that I wanted to make some more general points and that it worked better with fictional characters. So in fact I wrote it both ways and ended up writing it as a fictional book with an end sheet that talks on based on a story. So in fact I did try it both ways. The book was written about 5 or 6 years ago. They were looking for an illustrator, so they kept it for a while. But when I wrote it, the little boy wants to grow up to be president, the little black boy. That was a central point of the book. So in some ways, I wish it had come out earlier.
Like
I would have seemed like ahead of the curve. On another way, a book has to last over time, and it's interesting for me to, I rewrote it a little bit. I rewrote the end note But at first when I was upset, saying, well, wait a second, it's not as relevant now, because a big part was that dream.
That's right.
And the librarian, who's the hero of the book, explains to the child, because it's set in Boston, that there was a man who ran for president and nobody thought he could win because he was Catholic, and that Brewster should be able to dream and not let anything hold him back. So in light of the present circumstances, I've gone through the gamut of being a little upset that they didn't come out earlier, but I've come to the conclusion that the book has to be more than just the time. It has to work as a story.
So you'll keep it
over
intact?
time. So I'll keep it intact. I mean, it talks about the 70s in Boston when busing was a major issue, and I think that the story is as relevant now, and in some ways it's almost gotten a greater resonance to it.
Now it shows that his dream was realistic.
His dream was realistic.
Well,
yes.
but I think more importantly is by making the really important character in the book the librarian, you're cementing the book's longevity, because the librarians are the most important people to convince.
Oh, you see, and that would have never occurred to me in that marketing strategy, because my
Butter up the librarians.
And another Sidney Taylor award.
Because many of my books are Jewish themed, my wonderful agent Jeff Dwyer is always complaining to me that I need to branch out because we have such a tiny percentage of the audience, and why can't I write a book about bunnies that will sell hundreds of thousands of copies instead of writing books that only have 0.03% of the population. So I told him I would take care of that. I think he complained to me after Too Young for Yiddish. So of course with As Good as Anybody, Abraham, Joshua Heschel, Martin Luther King, I expanded that audience because we added the 10% of blacks. And so in Busing Brewster we made the librarian an Irish woman. So little by little we're expanding into that multicultural demographic. We're trying to add a tiny percentage for each book.
You need to go back and re-educate him that it's not just for the readers who are that. Like, you only want black people to read the Coretta Scott King winners?
That is 100% true.
Yeah.
But of course, as my agent,
more universal. As Good as Anybody is a very universal book, so it's going to reach across.
I think what he's looking for are bunnies and cats and things like that.
But the bunny readership is very low, and bunnies buy very few books.
Yeah. I'll tell him that. Well, Jeff, are you listening to this?
And besides which, they grow out of the bunny books. They grow into, very quickly, and they grow into...
Of course, more bunnies are always being born.
That's true. But in terms of a child's reading taste...
No, I was talking about actual bunnies.
Oh, I see. Okay, I missed that reference. I'm a little slow. But kids grow out of those books and they grow into books like As Good as Anybody, or Sandy Koufax, or the Book of Timeouts, and all these other things, right?
And we hope that they keep growing, and that picture books stay with kids beyond that very early age, and they don't feel like they outgrow them. Because oftentimes the kids, it's almost a secret. They love the picture books, and they're for all ages. But they reach a certain age where they start getting embarrassed being seen with that. Somebody like Barry Mosher has done many, many illustrated books that are basically geared towards adults. Mm-hmm. A lot of our greatest artists, are illustrating books for adults. And it's a shame that we go through this period of time where kids feel that if there are pictures in the book, it's babyish. Because I find one of the great secrets of learning about anything, if I want to learn about something, the first thing I do is I go to my library and I look in the picture book section. And if the author and artist have done their job right, they've boiled it down to the essentials, so you can learn the basis, and from there you can decide which direction you want to go and what you want to learn about it. So, it is for all ages.
Yeah.
that effect.
So Richard and Mark, thank you so much for this extended and interesting conversation on the floor of the gingerbread apartment.
It's great here. Everybody should come here and see this. This is amazing.
If you ever come to Chicago, come to Planet Esme. And thank you for having us on the show. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks a lot.
There are so many ways to connect with the Book of Life. Fan us at facebook.com/Book of Life Podcast. Follow us at twitter.com/Book of Life Pod. Email us at boooflifepodcast@gmail.com and listen to the latest episode by phone at 916-313-3820. And of course, find links to everything at bookoflifepodcast.com. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library, a congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida, at cbiboca.org, and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilachmakers Klezmer String Band at freilachmakers.com. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.